Symposium and earlier sessions that you've been on. It's been really interesting, the perspective and the insights that you brought in. I've really enjoyed those.
Thank you. Thank you. My pleasure.
Now, only thing what I'll do is, Laila, give me 1 minute to just talk about this event, because I just need to give a little introduction. Not that the introduction is not available in the uh, description of the video and all, but just in case people miss out. Basically, what we're doing is neutrality and mediation. That's the basic idea, and getting perspectives from everywhere. Because the idea being that let's just discuss the topic, because very casually people keep saying neutrality and neutral. I just feel that let's dig a little deeper and see where this has come from. Should we be using it or not? So it all started with, of course, the let me just put that up. That Desmond Tutu quote: "If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say that you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality." So coming from there, the idea was that let's do it. And in different situations, I mean, family, community, commercial, everywhere, other social issues, wars, everywhere. So let's have a broad discussion. So, of course, Bernie Mayer's session we had yesterday, and he's written a lot about neutrality. His last book also, Neutrality Trap, he's spoken about this. And of course, Ken Cloke is Ken Cloke, so he's giving the closing address. So that's the broad idea behind it. And after this, Laila, it's your show. I am a spectator. I'm not going on mute. I'm not a mute spectator. I'm there, but it's all yours. Neutrality and mediation. And somewhere in between, I'll talk about the World Mediation Circle and all, but I'll do that later. Yeah, please.
Okay. Thanks, Vikram. You know, each time I do the topics like this, it gives me an opportunity to think about it and think deeper about it. And thank you. So, as I thought about neutrality, I would like to approach it from, four kind of uh, from four areas. One is, why do I declare neutrality? Second, when I declare neutrality, it does not mean that I remain passive and not intervene when I have to. Third, as a neutral mediator, how do I approach fairness, unfairness? And fourth, neutrality needs to be understood in a nuanced way. So this is how I'm looking at it. So the first, why do I declare neutrality? I do this because it situates me correctly in mediation. I've been a lawyer for 25 years. So you can imagine how the adversarial is ingrained in my mind. I look at everything as binary, dualistic, good, bad. My client is the hero and the opponent is the villain. So I say in every dispute, there are two heroes and two villains. But when I come into mediation, I have to train my mind differently. This is facilitating collaboration. The opposite of good is not bad. I have to think non-dual. It's about perspectives. I listen from three levels: position, interest, emotion. So all this requires my mind to be trained. And I feel when I declare that I'm a neutral, it situates me better. Mediation is new in India. In the lifespan, it's relatively new, and we are all lawyers. So we have to take that to situate ourselves correctly. Secondly, I feel the parties also situate better. Parties are used to the lawyers. They know the lawyer's role. The lawyer is there to protect them, to safeguard their interests, to argue on their behalf, to treat the other as the enemy. But mediation is a different process. We have to cognitively help them understand that the mediator's role is different to the lawyer's role. And this is one good way of delivering that message. Third, and when you deliver that message, the promise of neutrality helps to convince them. It even convinces them about the process a little better. They see the process where they know the neutrality of the judge. The judge remains neutral, but then evaluates and passes a judgment. Whereas this neutral is very different. You remain neutral right through. And they understand mediation as a process where there is a third side who becomes a channel for them. So even the process is situated better when I declare that I'm a neutral. So I declare my neutrality when I introduce the process. So that is one important factor that I believe helps me in my mediation. Now, I declare neutrality, but that doesn't mean I remain passive. When any of the tenets of mediation, being self-determination, voluntariness, confidentiality, when any of these things, these factors are breached or are under threat, definitely I feel it is my job to intervene. For example, when I just look at I was doing a mediation. This was a case that was referred by the Supreme Court, and it was a family business dispute, and the one brother physically assaulted the other brother. And when it came for mediation, I was kind of designing the process, and I asked this brother who used violence, who is he bringing in for the mediation? And he said he wants to bring in 25 people into the mediation. And I knew the conversation is going to be so unproductive with 25 people. But he insisted. The other brother who was, who was injured very badly, he's coming with his wife and his lawyer. But there was nothing I could immediately do to stop the 25 people. But he came in with 25, but slowly he himself came to his realization that his conversation is very unproductive. So he by himself finally filtered the 25 to just one other person. And the other brother remained with 3, that is his lawyer and his wife and himself. So I had to intervene, but it could not be done in a manner that I get, I kind of get too prescriptive. It had to be done subtly. Or looking at different cases, I was trying to reflect. Sometimes the people in the mediation are very sensitive. I remember I was doing a matrimonial mediation, and I felt that there was still life in the marriage that had to be explored. So I suggested, would you like to meet a counselor? Some expert who will guide you through this. And they both said, okay, we'll do that. And they left the room, and they left, and I kind of turned to my table to arrange my table. Then they came back and they said, oh, madam, we came to thank you. And I turned around and I said, good luck. Few minutes later, the husband comes back and he says, I don't think you're a neutral. So I was surprised. I said, what happened? He said, you looked at my wife and said, good luck. I immediately apologized. I realized that's his sensitivity. And, I had to explain to him, I had to apologize to him. So neutrality depends on their sensitivity. Again, I get, I do get proactive sometimes when not sometimes, I always help parties to understand the risks involved, the alternatives, as we call it, the BATNA, best alternative to negotiated agreement. And normally I do it in private. And I can see that if I do it a little aggressively, then parties are suspecting my partiality. They think I'm being partial. But I always tell them, this is positive partiality because I'm doing the same thing in the other room. So a mediator does intervene. And that is, I don't cop out. I work very hard to help the parties explain the process. We have the different stages of the process. Initially, they go into the what happened conversations. At that point, when they explain, I'm watching, are they being, is there any abuse? Is there violence? Is everybody feeling comfortable enough to speak? If they are not, I intervene, I help them to rework their communication. So that is something that I do proactive, help them to understand the law, explore their underlying interest. And this is all done very proactively. And if they have the concerns, in one situation, again, that was a matrimonial dispute. The wife, the husband was kind of, very articulate, and he was able to say what he wanted, whereas the wife was quieter and she was not able to communicate so effectively. I found her struggling more and more. And then at a private session, I asked her, is there somebody who will help you feel more confident and you can bring them into the mediation? So she had to be empowered. The next day she came with a friend, she was much more confident. So that is an intervention. These are all interventions that I do as a mediator in order to balance the power. And being a neutral, it doesn't mean that I remain passive. I don't do anything. Definitely, there's a lot that we do intervene when the purpose of mediation, that is to help parties take informed decision, when there is a barrier, then we structure it in a way that parties are able to overcome that barrier. the third point, how do I look at fairness and unfairness? My perspective on this is, it is the party's idea of fairness that matters and not my idea of fairness or unfairness. There was a situation, a mediation that I was doing where this older gentleman, he was on one side and the other side was a younger couple. The older man was allotted property and he was working. When he retired, he came back to Bangalore and he realized that somebody else has built a house on that property. So litigation went on for many years and finally it came in for mediation and they negotiated. And as they negotiated, I noticed that this older gentleman was agreeing to a price which was much lesser than the market value in that area. And I was familiar with the market value of property in that area and I was surprised. Why is he agreeing to something so much less than the market value? So in a private session, I asked him, tell me, are you aware of the price in this neighborhood? And he said, yes, I know the value of this property is X. So I asked him, why are you agreeing for a fraction of that? And he explained to me that he had a sick wife. He had 2 disabled children who would have to go into an institution if he died. And he very well knew that he's already about 73, 74, that if something happens to him, his wife will not be able to enforce his rights. It will take a long time, and his 2 disabled children will not be looked after appropriately. He wanted them to be taken care of in his lifetime. So this half the price of the property was better for him now than getting the full price 10 years later when he may not be there, his children would be out on the streets. So that's fairness and unfairness. I always explore if I see unfairness in a mediation. I'm talking about disputes between 2 parties or a few parties. I'm not talking about large environmental disputes or public disputes. In these kind of disputes, when I see unfairness, I think the biggest weapon we have is to explore what is the underlying interest. That is what every mediator can do, and that does not impact neutrality. Intervention in order to understand the underlying interest, intervention to work with the parties to build that connection. It really, I don't think that is something which neutrality kind of prevents. So this is, sorry, Vikram, let me just switch off my phone.
Yeah, please. No issue at all.
I should have done it before you.
Can take some calls or whatever. Not a issue. I'll put something up. I'll put up the website. Let me just put that up. Let me put that up. Basically, mediatorvikram.com information is available. So
okay,
I'll come back. Yeah.
Okay. And then my last point, we need to understand neutrality in a nuanced way. It's not absolute. You have to put it into context. It is a fluid concept. So depending on the situation, we work with neutrality, always, of course, keeping the boundaries. And I think it's important for the mediator to understand the different kinds of power, to be sensitive to the power that parties could be using in a negative way. So there is, the power of authority, the power of the legal prerogative, or resources or education. There are so many ways power can be exercised. Even some people, they are more self-assured, more articulate, more uses communication skills better. These can all be aspects of using power. And as mediators, we need to be vigilant, understand when the power is being used negatively, and if it is being used negatively, intervene and work with it in a manner that nobody loses trust. Building trust is the most important aspect of neutrality. Especially as you start the mediation, the initial stages, that's a big part of mediation. And neutrality really helps. But that doesn't mean you intervene. You refrain from intervening appropriately. In fact, I read somewhere what are the aspects of neutrality. This is by Bowles. I don't know how you pronounce it, Boulles. He gave some important elements of the concept of neutrality. One, mediator has no personal views about or opinions on the dispute. Two, mediator has no interest of their own, personal, professional, or social. Three, no prior knowledge of the dispute. Four, does not know the parties, has no prior association. Five, mediator will not directly or indirectly sit in judgment of the parties. Six, mediator will not use his or her expertise in the subject matter of the dispute to influence the parties' decision making. And lastly, the mediator will conduct the process even-handedly, fairly, and without bias towards either side. Now, these are all important, but in today's world, you can't say that every situation has to cover all these aspects. There will be some situations that you have to contextualize. I did a family business dispute, and I happen to know the family. My husband was a classmate to one of the members of the family, but this dispute was really disrupting their this dispute was disrupting their business. The family was very keen that it is resolved, and they wanted me to be their mediator. I was in a dilemma. Should I accept or not? Because I knew the family. There was one brother that my husband went to school with. But since they insisted, I declared my connections and got it in writing from them that they wanted me despite the conflict that I had declared, and I did the mediation. And looking back in that mediation, because I knew them, there was another kind of relationship that was useful to bring the parties together and work towards a resolution. In fact, I remember at one point we were at an impasse, and this was over. They were dividing the business, the immovable properties, the family estate was being divided, and we were short of some 15 acres to convince one side. So at which point, I remember them telling me that one of the sisters who lived in Europe, she had 15 acres. And I didn't know the sister. I mean, I know all of them. So with their permission, I called up the sister and I said, we are here, we are at an impasse, and we are 15 acres short. And she said, oh, for the sake of peace in my family, I'm putting that 15 acres into the kitty. And the dispute settled, we resolved. Subsequently, when I met the sister, she said, both sets of my brothers, both compensated me for the 15 acres. So she was twice as good. So this, the elements of neutrality are very important. They're important guidelines, but that does not mean it is cast in stone. There has to be flexibility. It is nuanced. And finally, our goal is to help parties take informed decisions. So I really, to conclude, my perspective is neutrality is not about staying equally distant. It's about being the third side in conflict. Somebody, at least one person in the room who everybody trusts. One person who understands both sides and who can be a channel of communication to both sides. Who will be able to, a person who will be able to give them the truth in a peaceful, merciful way. You communicate the truth in a peaceful way, in a way that can bring about reconciliation. So it's not as if you don't say the truth, you say the truth, but reframe, use your communication skills. And a person who will help them to, when they are negotiating and fall into a ditch, somebody who pulls them out of the ditch. So, of course, always ensuring that there's no harm, no prejudice to if they choose to move out of this process and go into another process, somebody who will not create any prejudice. So more than just being equidistant, you need to maintain that. At the same time, there's lots more that the mediator does, which are positive interventions to help in a resolution. So this is my thought on neutrality.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I think that's something that definitely. I mean, we in the whole thing. I think trust is one of those words which is coming out, and I think a lot of it is based on that. And neutrality is something which whether people even are concerned with when that trust is there. So I think trust seems to be an important element for sure. But there is a whole concept, like you said, about this Bowles writing about these various elements and how the mediator should go about it. I think those are some things that need to be really discussed and not be. You don't really need to carry forward something without actually going a little deeper into it. So I think the thing sometimes theory comes out and then no one really maybe looks at it and gets passed on, and then it goes into places in the world where people just take it as, oh, this is the gospel truth, and now this is how mediation has to happen.
Yeah, it should not be a mindless application. You should be aware. A mediator, I think a mediator needs to reflect before declaring neutrality, before saying conflict of interest. What is my conflict of interest? It has to be fully, truly declared, so that parties have that confidence, that feeling of transparency, and they trust the mediator when the mediator intervenes. So it's a paradox. They need to feel that a mediator is completely with them. Both sides have to feel that. At the same time, mediators authentic, as yesterday Bernie explained. All these are important aspects, and that's when, and it's a journey. When you start the mediation, they don't trust you that much. That's not the time for you to be coming out with plain truths. But as you move along, a relationship is developed, and then more and more can be done.
I think people don't really, I mean, maybe don't understand what all is really happening there. That mediator actually has this very funny position where definitely there is this whole concept of, yes, neutrality, but intervention also has to happen. The trust has to continue through the process while still, I mean, being able to, in whatever way, intervening to of course you're doing it for them, but do they understand that? But without them sometimes understanding it, and still to be able to take the process through, the very fine balance that a mediator is doing. I think that's why I think people need to value mediators for that, but they don't even know what all is really happening there.
Yeah, that it's interesting. Once I had done a very complex mediation, and then the parties settled, and they kind of happily went away. So I asked one of my friends. He's actually my mentor, and I really have gained so much, learned so much from him. And I said, "How does this happen? I mean, they don't even realize." So he said, it really explains the skill of the mediator. It's such a gentle touch. They feel they've done it all themselves, part of self-determination. So you should be happy that when they don't turn around and say thank you, you should be happy.
You've done a good job.
You've done a very good job.
They're happy. They think they've done it. No.
Yeah, they've done it all by themselves. And they don't realize the amount of thinking and
Yes.
planning and the work that goes on in the mediation.
Exactly. I think that's the point. I mean, there is so much happening there,
Yeah.
which I mean, it has to come out in a very simple way that no one even knows what you're doing, and you've done it.
Yes.
And I think that's the main thing, that maybe mediation has not taken off the way it should be, because people are not going back and saying this. They're not saying,
Exactly. There's a nice picture of a duck, so smoothly and gently swimming in the water. But under the water, there is a lot of the work that goes on paddling around.
Exactly. The process flows smoothly. Everyone thinks, yes, they're in control, everything they're doing.
Yeah. Exactly.
But Laila, do you think that through the court system, is that something which this word has, because this is something which, who put it in relation to mediation, where it came from, where is the history, we also might not know. But the fact is that because it came through the court system, and people always felt that dispute resolution, a judge or whoever does it has to be neutral, so this other person who's coming in has to be neutral. Do you think that has been the carry forward from there?
I don't know if it's the court system or the nascent stages of the mediation journey. Because my experience has been that very few people understand what mediation really is. We started mediation around 2006-07. Very rarely do I have a party who understands what mediation is. Very rarely do I have lawyers who really understand what mediation is. So it's this concept of neutrality and all that is required, I believe, in a community where it's coming in for the first time.
But the thing is, look, the way I'm going about it, the way I want to promote it, is that these people who have that mediator mindset, who are already trusted, let's bring them in, so that at least this aspect of neutrality is not something which will even come up, because they've, through their conduct over years, whatever relationships they've had in the community or in families, they are trusted because of all that, so that their history is available to the people who are using them. So I'm taking it from there. I feel that's when the trust in the process will also happen.
But we don't have too many of that.
I'm trying my best to create these, I mean, like this mediation circles that I'm talking about, that in every area, every community as such, every country, create those. Let's go out, let's ask people, let's see how many come up, because I know that they're there, and because my little test marketing, as I call it, I've done that, and I've got that feedback. So it's all there. It's just that the communication has to go out very properly as to who are you talking about. because on one end we talk about like the word panchayat getting connected to the training programs that happen and all that, and do the people in the village actually understand those people as mediators? They don't. So to be able to go and say, okay, the process is what the panchayat does, tell us who is available in your community who can do that. Obviously that's an authority figure giving a decision for them, so they're not going to give you the right names. But if you actually go down, explain to them what the process is all about, and I mean, this is someone who's actually not going to take a decision for you. Once you actually get a little, I mean, that little conversation, if it happens, then the names come out. So that is why it has to be some people in the community whom I call peacemakers, who will be peacemakers who go out and actually talk about this. They have to really have that conversation to be able to get that clear. So that's the way
So,
I'm looking at it.
a person who has the reputation and the gravitas and the trust of the community is very good. And along with that, training is also important, um, because I believe that training gives a focus and a deeper understanding of the techniques. So if you can combine all this, that would be perfect.
But what I'm trying to do is, well, I of course don't call it training. I say skill development. So I'm saying that let's find the people with the skill, because I am of course looking at it on a very large scale, broad kind of thing. So I said we'll create those skill development programs which will be available on one. Look, one first thought process was, let's put it out for free on YouTube. Then I was telling you before this, I don't think free is appreciated. So so what I did now was I said, let's, the mediation circles that I'm creating, become a patron. So you're a patron, at least you're contributing something, and people who contribute, they will get access to certain material which is not going to be available for free out there, so that you value it. Because like, I mean, just imagine, Laila, if you are going out and actually, like here, if you just say something, will they really feel that they've got something? Have they really been given something which is valuable? Because it's come for free. So I think that aspect, I think it's a general psychology of people, that the same way what all you people do in the courts, all this free mediation that you do, I don't know whether it's really valued. I don't know. You would know better because I'm not connected to the court system. But I don't know whether people go out valuing it. It's come
All
for free.
depends on the experience you provide, whether it's in the court mediation or in private mediation. Are you providing a process which gives them the satisfaction of, the psychological, the process, the outcome satisfaction? Are they getting it? If they get it, they'll remember it. If they don't, they don't.
So you don't think free is an aspect there? It's just that the
Yeah,
experience that they have, it's all
yeah.
based on that. But well, let's just put up the definition of neutrality, because I also did not do this. I mean, did not really get into it. Let's just put it up. Let's see where the issue really lies in understanding the state of not supporting or helping either side. So I think this is something which we really need to discuss. Are you not supporting or helping either side, or are you helping both sides? So
Yeah, I think it's, to me, I like Bolt's components without giving it uh, the, the rigidity. I think those components are what makes uh, a mediator neutral, or the process is defined as neutrality is there. And of course, neutrality, impartiality, are they synonymous? These are all matters for discussion.
yeah, because the thing is that finally the discussion today is the omni-partiality or multi-partiality, or whatever way you want to put it. So that discussion has come up over the years because it started off as being, no, you have to be neutral, you're impartial, but then those words got connected to mediation. But should that baggage carry on? So that's one discussion. And the other thing, like here says, absence of decided views, expression of, okay, unless it's not strong feeling, but okay. So absence of decided views or expression. I was discussing with Bernie also this aspect that the way mediation is perceived, I mean, that's blind men and the elephant situation. So is it that there are some people who have this very purist concept of mediation, where that whole facilitation aspect only and no more, of course, if they believed in that, is then when we talk about neutrality and these meanings of neutrality, do they fit in onto that? And is that a limitation on mediation? I mean, that I think also we might need to also look at.
Honestly, Vikram, I think mediation is such a amazing process. We needed all these classifications of facilitative, evaluative, transformative. There's another narrative, like a story. What is your narrative? These are, but I very often feel that I'm all for
Exactly.
in many mediations. I do say stories. When I need to transform, I do that. I evaluate, I facilitate. So it's not as if I'm only facilitative, or maybe my inclination may be more to one than the other, but it's not straight lines.
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying, that the way some people have looked at it, is it a limitation that they have put on mediation, and because of which, look, I have to look at it from the perspective as to why mediation did not take off the way it should have. So what are the areas, reasons? So one of this is one reason I look at it, because this is a conversation which within the mediators you can have. But does the user, is the user first of all even interested? First of all, let's go with that. And because I keep saying that, look, you can walk out of the, people can walk out, they know they can walk out of the process. So are they really stuck in it? And are you supposed to take it only in a certain way?
I do believe it. These are concepts that adds to your self-reflection. Am I facilitative? Am I transformative? Was I a neutral? Why did I deviate from the core concept? So as a mediator, you're constantly reflecting, and that's what improves your practice. So these are all guidelines which should not be cast in stone, is my perspective on it.
Absolutely. But Mandy has come in. Mandy is actually in Greece. Yesterday also, I don't know whether when you saw the Bernice, she's in a very beautiful island in Greece.
Oh, where Crete, is it?
No, she's in Zakynthos. Zakynthos.
Yes.
When I see the pictures, then I realize, because she has some very beautiful concepts of life and seeing the good in everyone and all that. And then I say, if she's sitting in a beautiful place like that, all these good thoughts definitely will come in.
Hi, Mandy. Hi, Mandy. I enjoyed Greece. We stayed in Crete for about, I think, 10 days, and it was very,
yeah. Crete is very beautiful and very similar.
Yeah.
This is Mandy's
my
island.
Yes.
So I have to show this only because we have someone sitting in such a beautiful place with those beautiful thoughts about people and life. So, so Mandy, you want to say hi? You want to say hi to Laila?
I am. I'm thinking I become an interesting person because of the beauty of my island. Vikram is talking to me like I am Zakynthos myself.
You represent Zakynthos. It's very clear. That's it. No, because I tell you what happened, Laila. Yesterday, when we ended, I said,
just for a minute, I have to open the door. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I told Mandy, do you want to say bye to Bernie? So her joke is, she just put it on and said bye. Took a little too literally there. So
yeah.
So, but otherwise, Laila, in terms of development of mediation, why I'm having that discussion on the models part of it is also because I just feel that maybe are we confusing the user by putting these, even the word neutral, all these various models and all that aspect, are we really confusing the user?
I think the market is not yet ready to take in these concepts. But many of our mediators who have reflected, who have thought deeper on mediation, it is important that they use these guidelines to understand themselves, for their own inner reflections.
Yeah, I think finally, the way it has to go is that whatever you are more comfortable with, you'll take your practice in that way, and people will know, okay, I actually enjoyed this mediation with, and this was the mediator.
Yeah.
And you can, I was giving, I mean, some people might not like it about the example. I keep giving the example of movies. Now you ask someone for a recommendation because you know the movies that person will recommend are the movies you like to watch.
Yeah.
So same thing will happen in relation to the practice, that the kind of the way you would conduct it by
Yeah.
themselves, it won't go by this one did a transformative mediation, nothing, won't go by those words. It's just that Laila, I was very comfortable with the way Laila went about it. I liked the process, and the word of mouth will spread in that way.
And as a mediator, especially Vikram in India, and Mandy, in India, we don't have the privilege of saying, I do only employment disputes, so I do only intellectual property. I do all subject matters, whether it's employment, matrimonial, family business, sports, maritime, uh, the works, property, we labor dispute. Recently, I did a labor and public sector undertaking. So we have to do all kinds of disputes, and the approach is for some it will be more evaluative. Like if it's just a neat transaction, then it's more evaluative. Whereas if emotions are involved, then we do more facilitative. And if it's a family, we try to do transformative. So it all depends on the context.
Yeah, and in the same process, you'll go through various aspects.
Yeah. Some are more evaluative, some are more facilitative. It all, there's no neat package to it.
Because it's a moment-to-moment thing where it's going to go. I mean, you have to take the process the way you have to. It's whether
that's the beauty of mediation. It's I always say it's like a tapestry. I don't know which way I'm going when I start. What is that color that will be relevant there, or what is, I don't know. It's like inspiration. I depend totally on moment to moment inspiration.
Absolutely. This is where I have a little bit of a problem when the way mediation is, of course, taught. I mean, let's call it teaching. When it's taught in places, there is that. So some people have this focus on that whole facilitative. No, you can't go beyond this hand-tied kind of thing. And whether you're putting across the right thought process of mediation to people or not, by saying that, what are they really going to do? Are they going to keep questioning themselves through the process? Because you can't. It's a moment-to-moment thing. You can't. Can you say, no, am I going beyond that line? Should I be saying this? If you start questioning even one word of yours, you're not going to be, I mean, it won't be fair on the process.
Yeah, you're right. So it's such a creative process. You can't put labels to it, or rigid structures to it.
Yeah, but what I'd have to take you through, Laila, is the World Mediation Circle, because of, like, I mean, whenever I see Mandy, I remember that, because we're developing a Zakynthos Mediation Circle, and of course in country wise. So let me just put that out to you, because we have to create this India Mediation Circle also. So definitely, I don't know whether you've seen that. I don't know whether I don't think last time we were talking about it, but the idea being that create a web of, you only use the word web. You said web in the last discussion. I was saying this network of mediation circles, and so I actually went out and put web there. So you are familiar with it. I've spoken to you about it. Now I remember when I said, because when I talk about the web, every community, every school, we have to create those. And I'm telling you this is because you'll have to give me your thoughts on the India perspective also. But the point is, I've tried to divide them, which I told you earlier about the mediators, the peacemakers, and the participants. Of course, you were using parties today. I did not say anything, but we are going the participant route. So the whole thing being that let's go out, let's identify these people with the mediator mindset, and then around it, there is a circle created in that, let's see, a school or a community, where the peacemaker is the one who's actually bringing people in and talking about the process, and actually being able to reach out to the various, I mean, whoever the participants involved, and getting them there. So that's how it's going to be a step-by-step thing. But here what I did was, of course, to be part of it, step one is be a patron. So that part of it is, that is definitely here. That link is there. So this being the idea, which of course, now that I know that you've heard about it, but the whole humanistic mediation and moral values, principles, and ethics based thing, because I just feel that, I mean, even the fact that you were talking about this family and the sister saying that, look, take my 15 acres kind of thing, it's much deeper. I mean, it's not about value there. That's what I'm saying. That's why I said not value. it's not, the sister is not looking at value. She's looking at peace within the family. So there is much deeper things happening there, which I think need to be, of course, highlighted. That actually people are looking at much more in terms of connections. It's not just a settlement kind of thing. So
Oh
that's
my
the
God.
yeah.
Vikram, as a mediator, you ask the mediator for his or her stories. And I can tell you moments where I believe that I saw the divine.
Yep.
I saw the face of the divine. There are amazing moments. So, I don't know if this can be explained, but it has to be experienced.
Exactly. Look, that was the idea behind that symposium on heart, soul, spirituality, and mediation. And this is not spirituality in the religion sense, which we're talking about. It is this is that connection, and like you say, feeling the divine. It is something which is where the right minds are meeting, the right your hearts are meeting, souls are meeting. There's something there happening there, which we don't really, like I said, we don't have to wait for science to give us a word for it. We can experience it, and people have experienced it. And that's the enjoyable mediation that you want to do. I mean, that's where you feel that you are actually maybe transformed. And that's when the transformative mediation word comes in, and transformation to a different level altogether. I mean, that
Yeah.
of course the healing and all that, yes. So that's the kind of mediation that I'm trying to promote. I want to promote that part.
See, Vikram, you need different kinds of mediation. If it's a neat transaction, I buy a machinery for 5 lakhs, and then there is a dispute. That's a very transactional, and it doesn't need transformation or narrative or whatever. So it all context governed.
No, and you'll be very surprised that even like you're saying about commercial things also, actually that human touch, that
Of
human,
course.
it is there, that it
Yeah.
works,
Yeah.
and there is a yeah.
In fact, I'm doing a fair number of mediations coming from arbitration. The clause is arbitration. They go for the appointment of an arbitrator, and at that point, the judge, that's called Section 11 of the Arbitration Act, the judge sends it for arbitration, for mediation. I've had lawyers, senior veteran lawyers who come in and say, please, we are here because the judge asked us to come for mediation, but do whatever you have to do and we need to leave. And they're so aggressive and obnoxious. They go through the process. In fact, I've kept one of those feedbacks, and they say every commercial dispute should be resolved this way. So that mindset, you have the courts. I believe it's the courts, because that is the catchment area of disputes. The court should push cases for mediation. In America, I've seen how the judge will keep on pushing participants for mediation. and at some point or the other, they give it. Maybe it's in the initial stages or mid stages, even just before judgment is pronounced, they're given a chance. Try mediation.
So what I'm trying to do is I'm doing it the other way. Both things are going to be part and parcel of the way it's going to go, and I will not be able to in any way be able to even talk about it to the judiciary and the court system, because they have their reasons for it. So I'm not going to get into that. So I decided, and whatever benefit comes from there, let it come. But on the other end, let people experience it in a different way, where it's not come through any kind of an authority figure. It's not even the threat of courts. That also goes away over time. Initially, obviously, it's not going to happen right now. That whole conditioning of the mind about the court is going to stay. But to a point when even that threat is not there, it is all about that whole collaborative thing, because it's ultimately is good for everyone.
It's happening, Vikram. In fact, I'm right now doing a family business dispute. They are so particular that even the lawyers who are representing them should really understand what mediation is. Their objective is not to go into courts. Their objective is to have a fair restructuring of their business. So the lawyers should be focused towards collaboration. Don't bring in adversarial elements. So slowly it will happen. But for that, we have to build a captive audience. That critical number should be there.
Well, I am trying to push it through the legal heads. The legal head will be the one who'll finally be able to put it into this direction, what you're saying. Look, we don't want to even go there, and bring in the lawyers only when required. So it's going to come from them. And then, of course, the culture will develop on that, and everyone will then maybe talk about it. And then the whole process goes on. I think that's the way it's going to
So
happen.
the tipping point comes when you have a critical mass.
Yeah, I think
That's
that's
a tipping point. So people like you, the work that you're doing, I do believe will create that critical mass.
yeah. I hope so. I hope so, because it should not be the chicken and the egg situation. It has to, that status quo has to be broken, and whatever way we'll do
Yeah.
that.
You're all struggling with Vikram. I've set up my private practice from 2015. And, this is what we are working with, creating that critical mass. And I think many countries, how is it like, Mandy, in Greece? Is there, I'm sure you're also working hard to create that critical mass of people who say yes to mediation.
Yes, Mandy, tell us. But she's putting up her thing. She's heard it, heard us, but she wants to use that headphones to do it.
Mm.
Yes, Mandy. Yes.
It's difficult if we see the result. Yes, you can say difficult or hard, but I think mediation is not only the result, not even to convince the participants, which are not participants yet, to come to mediation. They are parts. I believe that the kindness and the neutrality is very important, even in the stage before mediation, to respect the difficulties. People have to talk, to open their hearts and their minds, because if they could do that, there would be no difficulty. The fact that they can't do it, or it's difficult, it's part of the difficulty and the problem and all these blockages people have. So I can't say it's hard, because if it's hard to convince them, it's hard to do mediation also. It's because mediation is a lifestyle, a way of living, and a way of communicating. I believe that even if they don't say yes to mediation, to be able to communicate and to talk to the parties about the conflict they have, and give them some aspects to think about, or some questions they can think deeper after they leave, after they say no, thank you. The lawyers are mainly the persons who say no to mediation, I think.
Yeah.
So they live here, and I know, even from their eyes, even from their words, or they say it sometimes they come back. It's part of the difficulty to say no to mediation. It's part of the difficulty people have to trust, the fears people have. And I believe it's even much more important to talk with people before they become participants.
But in general, has mediation really taken off in Greece? Has it taken off in Greece? Are people talking about it? Is it a process which they look
Yes,
at?
it's obligated for some cases. So they come to talk about it just to be able to go to court. I really feel it's very important that they come here, even if they have already decided just to take the paper that they heard about mediation and keep on with the court. even then, because they are not here stressed to solve the problem, they are cooler, they are more open, and sometimes this procedure is very, very important because they come here not willing to do mediation, but there is, a kind way to open a discussion and say something, even if they don't want to talk about it seriously. So there is always something to say, and it's the completely neutral stage of pre-mediation, because you are not in the case. So you don't have any kind of opinion or feelings or these things as humans maybe we have for the parties or the case. So you are neutral and you talk to equal people, which is, I believe, which is the most important thing we as mediators have to offer. And this is the stage that it's a chance to earn the trust because of that.
Yes, Laila. So that's what happening. But this is, I think, the similar situation everywhere in the world. I think that's the same thing which everyone is going through. And
yeah.
Mandy has to.
In small places like my island, because they know each other and they are friends or family, or I don't know what. It's they meet each other every day in work, in the road, in a friend's place. It's that is a reason to solve it, but also a reason to keep this egoistic. And it's if they want, it's that is at the end. That's what I believe is. It's to help them realize if they want to live with that or not, if it's useful for their life, this problem, this conflict, if they can have a better life without it, and if they are efficient and if they have the power and the qualifications to find their own solution.
So Laila, now it is your concluding remarks, how you would want to end the session. What you left here.
So I'm glad you're having these discussions, and anything that we can do to really enhance the quality of mediation that we have in our country, in India. I'm talking about India, because this process requires very subtle skills. And unless there are enough mediators who understand the nuances, the subtleties that mediation requires, we are really not going to be able to attract enough people to try mediation. So, Vikram, I congratulate you for what you're doing. You're trying to really create those conversations. All the best.
Thank you very much. And sometimes I'll tell you, sometimes people think that because I keep saying about the training and that's not required, you don't need any qualifications or anything. That mediator mindset is all that you need. But actually the work that I'm doing and these mediation circles that I'm trying to create and bring out these people with the mediator mindset, actually I'm helping that industry, the training industry as we call it, because once the person actually feels that yes, this is something that they really want to do, because they might not be looking at it as, okay, this is something, the way of life kind of thing, or there is no more to this. But when you tell them, no, there is more to this, I'll be feeding those people. I mean, training these your institution. These people are the ones who are the right people to give that knowledge to. That those skill development programs, these are the people who need it, and they will take it further. and that they'll be appreciated. And that's how I think that's the way the movement will go forward. It's not, so I'm not in, it's not, I mean, sometimes people might feel that, look, I mean, I'm in a conflicted kind of situation on this. No, I think it's part of the same thing, except that the people that I'm looking at are the people with that mindset. So in your training program, if there are 30 people, if all 30 have that mindset, you'll enjoy that whole session. You'll enjoy talking to them, because they'll relate to it. So I think it's all part of this whole, I mean, works together.
Yeah.
So thank you, Laila. And
Very much. Wonderful, Vikram and Mandy. All the best.
thank you, and see you. I hope to see you soon.
Can I say bye?
You can say bye.
Bye, you're welcome to Zakynthos.
Thank you. I'll take you up on it.
I will look forward.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.